Good morning, everyone. My name is ChuChen, and together with my partner Luwen, we will be discussing Clara Bishop's essay, Antagonism and Relational Ethics. And about the author Claire Bishop, and she's British art historian and critic, and her occupation is Presidential Professor of Art History at CUNY Graduate Center in New York, and she's known for his histories and theories of participation, art, and performance. And her notable work is Artificial House in 2012 and also this essay, Antagonism and Relational Ethics, which remains an influential critic of relational ethics. And also, the main figure she critiques in essay, which is Nicolas Bourriaud, and he is French curator and art critic, and one of the founders of Ballet de Tokyo in Paris, where he served as co-director from 1999 to 2006. And yeah, he is the author of Relational Ethics in 1997. Here is the starting point of her article. It's the Ballet de Tokyo, and it spends 4.75 million euros on converting the former Japanese pavilion for 1973 World's Fair into a site for contemporary creation. And most of this money had been used to reinforce rather than renovate the existing structure. And it reflects that the museum start looking less like fancy galleries and more like studio or laboratory in like a white cube. And because the art itself has become experimental, interactive, and like kind of unfinished. As Bishop said, at that time, work is more like open-ended, interactive, and resistant to be closure, and often appearing to be work in progress rather than a completed object. And also related to this tendency, is a trend towards inviting contemporary artists to design or troubleshoot amenities within the museum, such as the bar or reading lounge. And as Bishops argues in the article, the artist as designer function over complete contemplation and open-endedness over aesthetics resolution is over ultimately to enhance the status of curator. Okay, and back to the relational aesthetics. What is relational aesthetics? Like Nicolas Bourriaud said, elaborated collectively rather than in privatized space of individual consumption and entirely beholden to contingencies of its environment and audience. Like art is a state of encounter. And seek only to find provisional solutions in here and now, and learning to inhabit the world in a better way and set up functioning microtopias in the present, and a direct response to the shift from a goods to a service-based economy. And the relational artworks featured in his seminal exhibition trafficked at CAPC Bordeaux in 1993, and they shows a similar characteristic, like a low impact in appearance and insist upon use rather than contemplation, and they are not meant to be contemplated, but to be used, lived, and experienced. And they are working within the same practical and theoretical horizon, the realm of relationships between people. In this article, Bishop mentions two artists who are particularly representative of relational aesthetics, and the first one is Recreate Tevanija. And in the work of Untitled Stew, 1992 and 303 Gallery. He set up with paper plates, plastic knives and forks, gas burners, kitchen utensils, and 2 folding tables and some folding stools. And in the gallery, he cooked curries for visitors and detritus, utensils, and food packets become the art. And she said in article, this work enrolled the distinction between institutional and social space, but between artist and viewer. And on the left is one of his work called Untitled, Tomorrow is Another Day, 1996, which is a wooden reconstruction of his New York apartment and was made open to public 24 hours a day and let people do anything in it. And on the middle is called Untitled Cinema de Valet, I guess, in 1998. And it's for the local audience, like playing their favorite movies on it. And on the right is called Untitled 1990 Pai Tai, and it's the artist cooking Pai Tai for also audience and the participants. And these are emphasized remains on use over contemplation. As Bishop said, they are reproduce economy model of globalization, but does not reflexively question the logic. And the other artist that she mentioned in article is Liam Jillick. And on the left is his work called Pinboard Project, and it's a bulletin board containing instructions for use, potential items for inclusion on the board, and a recommendation to subscribe to a limited number of specialist journals. On the right is called Big Conference Center Limitation Screen. It's a 3+2 meter colored plexiglass screen. And as the author said it is to help to define a location where individuals' actions are limited by rules imposed by the community as a whole. And also the author, Liam Jillick, said he is happy for viewers to just stand with their backs to the work and talk to each other. And without people, it's not art, it's something else, stuff in a room. So rather than focusing on the object itself, Jillick's work and collaborative practice lie in the contingencies of a relationship between. And then moving on to Bishop's critique of Borrell's relational theory, she first points out that he misinterprets one of his most important theoretical underpinnings. Umberto echoes the open work. He believes that relational are privileges, intersubjective relations over detached opticality. But echoes contention that every work of art is potentially open, since it may produce an unlimited range of possible readings. Borrell misinterprets these arguments by applying them to a specific type of work, those that require little interaction, and thereby redirects the argument back to artistic intentionality rather than issues of reception. And he also believes that the work of art reproducing the conditions of our existence in a fragmented modern culture, but actually Echo regarded the work of art as a reflection of the conditions of our existence in a fragmented modern culture. So in Bishop's main critiques of relational art can be summarized as follows. First, relational artworks claims to defer to their context. They do not question their imbrication within it. Jillick's pinboard are embraced as a democratic in structure, but only those who own them may interact with their arrangement. And also the quality of relationships in relational aesthetics are never examined or called into question. So the works of art, they appear to be highly social, but in reality, they remain embedded within the very system they claim to engage with, like operating inside existing structures rather than stepping outside or creating them. And also, all relations that permit dialogue are automatically assumed to be democratic and therefore good. The meaning here is that relational art essentially creates a small utopia. And since the relationship it produces are like as pre-selected, so they exclude conflict, difference, and political tension. And those who participate in it share a common interest in art. So it's like a fake democracy. In the end of my part, I like to recommend a film that perfectly, completely matches the idea of Bishop. It's called The Square, and the director is Ruben. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He's a Swedish. And the main character, also a curator, is really sharp. It's really sharp, I have to say. Uh, it's about like its hypocrisy of democracy and political correctness, and you have to watch it because it's really just aligned with Bishop's critics. Yeah, that's it. And for the part concerning about antagonism, my partner Luwen will discuss that next.
Hi, I'm Luwen. In my part, I'm talking about how Korea Bishop redefines democracy in art through the idea of conflict. On the left, we see Santiago Serra's work. He paid 6 unemployed men to let him tattoo a black line across their backs, connecting their bodies like one continuous mark. It's uncomfortable to see, and that's the point. It shows how inequality and exploitation still exist even inside participation. On the right, Thomas Harshen's part of Mountain was building a poor immigrant neighborhood. The sculpture and the coffee area are both parts of this project. They create a space for people to meet, talk, and think together. So both artists show that democracy in art isn't about comfort or harmony, it's about conflict. Next, I will explain what Bishop means by antagonism. She argues that every democratic society is built on conflicts, not harmony. Human relationships are always shaped by difference. We define ourselves through others, through what we are not. As the right, the presence of the other prevents me from being totally myself. This means that society can never be completely unified or without tension. There will always be disagreement, negotiation, and competing perspectives. For Bishop, this political theory transforms how we think about democracy in art. She believes that democracy doesn't come from comfort or consensus, but from making conflict visible and allowing difference to exist within shared space. So instead of uh, erasing disagreement, art should expose it, showing that participation and dialogue can include tension, not just agreement. As Bishop concludes, antagonism is not um, hostility. It keeps democracy alive. In other words, conflict don't have to be negative or violent. It's not about fighting. It's about recognizing that diversity and disagreement are what make democracy dynamic. This work by Santiago Sierra is a good example of what Bishop called relational and antagonism. As Bishop writes, participation does not always mean equality. In this piece, Sarah hired undocumented immigrants who were not legally allowed to receive wigs. He asked them to sit inside cardboard boxes in the gallery for several hours. The audience could see the boxes, but not the workers inside. The workers are taking part in the artwork, but at the same time, they remain excluded from social and economic systems. The gallery becomes a small version of real inequality. We can see the workers inside the boxes, and that's actually the distance Sarah creates. He doesn't want the audience to feel empathy or emotional connection. He wants us to feel uncomfortable. This discomfort becomes a space for critical thinking. So another important point is that the audience don't need to emotionally merge with the artwork, but keep a critical distance instead. In this final part, I want to connect Herschel's and Bragra's works with Bishop's idea. Bishop argues that antagonism in art is not about creating chaos, but about keeping space for awareness, difference, and thought. For Herschel, democracy means thinking together while accepting disagreement. In his works, people could discuss, read, and reflect. It's about the coexistence of different voices in one space. Bragg extends this into real political experience. In Tutlin's Whispers number 6, the right work at work. Citizens speak freely for 1 minute, but soldiers stand beside them, reminding us that freedom always existing within power. So to conclude, beyond what Bishop mentioned, eternal harmony is unreasonable. Struggle is democracy. Bishop also reminds us art doesn't need to make us identify emotionally. Instead, it should give us space to think critically and independently. So this is our presentation. And finally, we have 3 questions. The first is today, social media allows people to appreciate art and express their options equally. For example, by rating films or leaving comments. But sometimes works that's hard to understand get rated very low, even if they are excellent. So, in a way, can democracy actually cause some great artworks to lose the recognition they deserve? The second is, do you agree with Bishop's view that conflict is necessary for democracy, both in art and in society? Why? The third is, if you were creating artwork about social or political issues, would you aim for harmony or antagonism? Why?